Dear viewers, thank you for always watching us, and welcome to another session on biology. And previously we have been looking at practical papers, that is biology paper 2 and biology paper 3, and we recorded 3 sessions, and they are already on our YouTube channel, Gerald-Biologyconnect. And then today I bring to you another video on biology paper 1, the theory paper. And before we go any further in this video, you're going to understand what biology paper 1 consists of, how to answer section A very well, and how to deal with section B. But in that, we shall be digging into details of how best to maximize the scores in these 2 sections of biology paper 1, that is section A and B. But before we go into the details of it, subscribe to this YouTube channel, like and share, so that we may get more of these tutorials. Let's continue with our session of today. Now what we are displaying is our biology paper. This is mine. Then if it was the UNEB, still it will be having the particulars, but it is the same as this format. This one is designed by me, Gerald, at Biology-Connect, as you're seeing, and we are going to be going through it. The biology paper it contains of 7 items, like you're seeing in the instructions, and these 7 examination items, a learner is supposed to answer only 5 of them. And in this format, section A, the learner answers 3 items which are compulsory, and the learner is supposed to answer in the spaces provided. Then section B has 2 parts, that is part 1 and part 2, and the learner answers 1 item from each part. So adding to the 3 compulsory items, those become the 5 items the learner answers in this paper. So this video is so helpful, and it is a must to watch. Tell a friend that the earlier they watched this video, the better. Can find it at our YouTube channel, Gerald-Biologyconnect. Let's go into what makes up item 1. When we look at what item 1 is made up of, we are seeing Mr. Kadimba, a farmer in Mityana district, intercropped beans within a mature banana plantation, and when the beans were flowering and bananas bearing fruits, the area experienced a heavy hailstorm that left the entire garden destroyed. Many bean flowers, leaves and stems were broken to the ground, and some banana plants were even uprooted. Mr. Kadimba did not harvest any beans. 2 months later, he observed that the remaining banana plants developed an extensive root system, producing numerous suckers with broad green leaves and straight stems. The banana plantation was restored. So, when you look into this scenario, you see that item 1 contains processes on plants, all these topics of nutrition in plants, transport in plants, and there we can talk about photosynthesis, we can talk about transpiration, talk about processes of root formation and seed formation, fertilization, pollination, talk about water absorption. All those ones are contained in this concept of item 1, and then challenges plants face that may make those processes fail to operate very well. Those ones are also included within here, and they are the ones that help us to develop scenarios. So those concepts you studied of challenges on plants talk about viruses in senior 1, viral diseases of plants like cassava mosaic, talk about heavy winds, hailstorms, and how they affect plants. You need to have the entire process. These ideas I'm giving you, they are meant to help you understand the concept in detail, other than just getting it to use it plus exams alone, because items can be twisted in different forms. However, the concept remains the same. So let's go directly to our responses. Let's get to our responses. So when you look at this item here, it is asking task explain how, part A, the hailstorm affected the beans, leading to no harvest that season. So how do we go about that? Now, what we are going to do here is to make sure we follow these two things. What am I telling you to follow? When we are giving these points, number 1, make sure you stick to the scenario. Don't bring other ideas that are not in the scenario, unless scenario has not restricted you to some specific points. When you look at this scenario, is talking about many bean flowers, leaves and stems being broken to the ground, and others being banana plants being uprooted. So those are the concepts we are talking about, and since we are talking about beans, then the one of banana plants being uprooted, we put it aside. And what are we saying? Excuse me. What we are saying is that include the factor or what was happening in the scenario and which part was affected, including which process is affected. That's how we are explaining. For example, if you want to explain about fertilization and fruit formation, don't just say fertilization is the process of union of gametes, forming zygote. How was fertilization affected? Which part was destroyed that led to fertilization not taking place, and how does it affect the plant? For example, here I'm saying the hailstorm destroyed flowers. The hailstorm destroyed flowers, which are responsible for fertilization and fruit formation, and hence no fruits and seeds were formed. See, those are the two areas we are looking at. What did the hailstorm do? The hailstorm destroyed flowers. So what? The flowers are responsible for fertilization and fruit formation. What happened? No fruits and seeds were formed. We can look at another one. Can scroll down and you see another example we have is it damaged bean leaves which contain see that, which contain chlorophyll. See how are bean leaves linked to the functioning of the plant? They contain chlorophyll that traps sunlight for photosynthesis, and therefore if they transport sunlight for photosynthesis, then it means the food production will be less or will be limited. Another one, we are talking about damage to the stems. Damage to the stems. What did it do? It impaired the transportation of water and mineral salts. See that? Transportation of water and mineral salts to the shoot of the plant, and this led to stunted growth of the plant and hence no harvest. See, because these mineral salts, they are so important in the process of growth and development. So that is part 1, and we have seen that it contains part A of item 1. According to this scenario, it wanted us to see how the storm affected the plant and then how it led to no harvest that season. Part B, the banana plantation was restored 2 months after the hailstorm. Why is it that the banana plantation was restored? Here comes the reason. The banana plants developed an extensive root system. When we go back to the scenario, we have seen an extensive root system, broad leaves, numerous suckers, and development of straight stems. We are not just getting them from anywhere else, but from the scenario. And see, 2 months later, he observed that the remaining banana plants developed an extensive root system, produced numerous suckers with broad green leaves and straight stems, and then he says the banana plantation was restored. So here we are saying the banana plants developed an extensive root system which enabled them to absorb water and mineral salts used for metabolic activities and photosynthesis. Then here we say broad leaves provided a large surface area for absorption of sunlight, which provides energy required for photosynthesis to take place. See? Numerous suckers produced enabled plants to multiply in number, and since bananas reproduce by vegetatively by suckers, this help to replace the ones destroyed by the hailstorm. Like when you give your point, you're giving how answer the how part. How does did the extensive root system enable the banana plants to survive or to be restored? The development of straight stems provided support to the shoot so that it receives enough sunlight required for photosynthesis. So in simple terms, those are the points that are required on that part of item 1 according to my scenario, or the one we have brought. And according to this item, we had 2 parts, A and B. It doesn't mean that all of them will come like this, but according to this scenario, that is what was required. Question is, don't we have other processes which, when affected, can affect the functioning of the plant? Yes, we have them. For instance, you can talk about transpiration, you could talk about respiration, but any process you talk about should be linked with evidence in the scenario. If it is not, then that one ceases to be correct according to what we are talking about. And for item 1, before we go to another item, we have just said that it is looking at all these processes taking place in plants, factors affecting them, dangers or challenges plants face that hinder those processes from taking place very well. And when you capture those things with different adaptations and modification of plants to survive harsh conditions in the environment, then that one becomes very easy for you. Let's go to item 2, and item 2 reads grandmother instructed her grandson to watch over a saucepan of milk on fire until it boils. At boiling, the old woman rushed to lift the saucepan, but in the event, she immediately released it, slipped off, and fractured her leg, in addition to burns and scalds sustained. When rushed to the hospital, the orthopedic doctor diagnosed her with osteoporosis. And here comes the questions. Explain, part 1, the effects of the grandmother's health condition as stated by the doctor. So now here, this item 2, some people take it to be with the coordination alone, and but it contains most of the concepts on human physiology, containing the excretion, concepts linking up with the nutrition, but mostly those of coordination, both nervous and chemical coordination, receptor organs, locomotion. Those processes can be asked at any point in time. The concept of substance and drug abuse. And here, when you look at this, we are merging the concepts of hormonal disorders, which is excretion, nervous coordination, but still there is a concept of chemical coordination, but still I'm bringing in the concept of nervous coordination. Therefore, it is a blend between different topics. That's where you always see concepts called elements of construct, where we capture competences from different topics which are similar and we use them to construct items. So the effect of the grandmother's health condition as stated by the doctor. What is that health condition? Of course, we are seeing it is osteoporosis, and it leads to weak and brittle bones which are susceptible to fractures, which easily break. There are other concepts you can talk about. Of course, I just put one, but a stooped posture. Why does all this happen? You recall that osteoporosis is caused by the over-secretion of parathyroid hormone. That when our bodies are having low calcium levels, our body's processes, other body processes need calcium, and what happens is that parathyroid hormone is released, and when it is secreted into the bloodstream, it stimulates a process called bone desorption, where the bone tissue breaks down to expose or to produce, to lead to loss of calcium ions from the bone tissue, but still accumulating the amount of calcium in the blood that will be flowing to other parts of the body. So that one leads to bones becoming so weak and spongy, so they lose a lot of calcium and they can easily break. They become so brittle, soft. So here they are saying now if you are not so vigilant, you see that so you can see that most of the times learners, we just got some few points according from the beginning what it was. If you have done questions on identify the health condition and you just mention, then here they say how did they explain the effect of the grandmother's health condition. And so what am I saying is that we need to be responding to demands of the task, not making our own thinking, our own program. Part B, still part A, Roman 2, explain how the reaction after lifting the hot saucepan came about. How? Just lifting the hot saucepan, immediately you release it. How did that happen? Here we have the concept, and we are saying that thermoreceptors in her hands detected heat stimulus and converted it to nerve impulses, and these nerve impulses are transmitted by sensory neurons to the spinal cord. Then in the spinal cord, the interrelay or the relay neurons connected sensory neurons to motor neurons that they may share information at a synapse. Then motor neurons transmitted impulses from the spinal cord to the effector muscles, that is biceps muscles of her arm, and these contracted, causing the immediate release of the saucepan. Simple as that. You need to talk about that path from a stimulus, receptor, then sensory neurons, taking the information to the spinal cord where the interrelay neurons and connect the sensory neurons and motor neurons, so that the information flows back from the spinal cord now to the motor effector muscles which respond to that signal by contracting and release the arm. So what are the major components in this reflex arc? 1, the stimulus. 2, receptor organs. Now those are the receptor cells in this concept are thermoreceptors in the skin. The receptor organ is the skin, then thermoreceptors, or the heat receptors, pain receptors in the skin are the ones which are receptor cells. And now here there is a common mistake of saying that sensory neurons detect the stimulus. No, the stimulus is detected by receptors, and sensory neurons do the major role of transmitting these receptors to this stimulus to the central nervous system that is in the spinal cord. So that is briefly the concept of the reflex arc and how it works. Then advise the grandmother on how she can manage and improve her health condition as stated by the doctor. Here there is a very great problem that you find out that most of the responses put are on food, as though there were no other points to talk about. But here we can say, for instance, can talk about the fact that the grandmother should increase on the intake of calcium foods, for example, dairy products, leafy greens, and vitamin D foods like fatty fish and fortified cereals. Don't stop there. Why? To make bones strong. See? I'm marking points that you need to give for your point to be very complete. She should engage in physical exercises like walking to promote bone density and strength. See? Let our points be built up so that they come with not leaving out questions. She should consult the doctor about prescribed medications that can slow bone loss and build the bones. See? These are different ideas, not necessarily on food, but giving different aspects. She should not get involved in smoking and excessive consumption of alcohol. Why? Because these ones affect bone health. So that's how. Let's not give these answers which are not elaborated. This is a short, precise sentence, but very meaningful. She should take measures to prevent falls like lighting. Yes, let her prevent measures. Prevent any risk to falling by, for example, including lights everywhere so that doesn't be susceptible to the falling. So we have been able here to see that also in these concepts of item 2, we are seeing processes that are taking place in bodies of humans, process of growth, process of excretion, coordination, locomotion. What affects them? How do they take place? And how do we manage conditions that affect them? Here, for instance, we are looking at chemical coordination as a process involving hormones and the way they function. How do they function? What would happen when those hormones are affected? That is what we are looking at. And maybe if I may show you the major points in this concept of reflex action, we said we are looking at these thermoreceptors detecting the stimulus, and then the stimulus be converted into nerve impulses, and then nerve impulses are transmitted by sensory neurons to the spinal cord. And what happens in the spinal cord, the relay neurons connect motor neurons and sensory neurons at a synapse, and then motor neurons transmit impulses from spinal cord to the effector muscles, and then effectors contract, causing the release of a saucepan, which is a response. So in simple terms, those are the major concepts you need to talk about. Okay, so I think without wasting time, we can go to item 3. So item 3 looks at concepts of reproduction, growth, development, inheritance, that is genetics, variations. Yeah, most of those concepts are on item 3. And an example, and before I dig into an example, we always have those concepts that that talk about mostly those applications. Where do those processes of genetics, reproduction apply in real life settings? Talk about processes involving dealing with adolescents, things involving teenage pregnancies, abortions, quarrels developing among couples concerning the ownership of the children, who is the father, perhaps this one, or is a bastard obtained from out, a lot of things. And how do we figure out that? And it is better to always look at these in the angle of the applications in a real life setting. For instance, here we have an NGO was established in a given community which has high cases of teenage pregnancy and related problems. The NGO has 2 clear mandates to execute in the community, namely to sensitize adolescents on reproductive health, with emphasis on menstruation as a landmark process in adolescent girls, and then to promote awareness on STIs, especially HIV/AIDS, and promote healthy living. Those are the 2 major scenarios. That's why I highlighted them. And the NGO does its work through meetings with the youth and other groups to sensitize them in line with the mandate above. And then we proceed with our task. Provide information to explain how the landmark process in the first mandate of the NGO occurs in adolescent girls. So question would be, what is that landmark process in the first mandate, and what did the first mandate say? The first mandate is here: sensitize adolescents on reproductive health, with emphasis on menstruation. And then they say, as a landmark process in adolescent girls, meaning our landmark process is menstruation. So here they say provide information to explain how the landmark process in the first mandate of the NGO occurs in adolescent girls. In simple terms, we are explaining how adolescence takes place in menstruation takes place in adolescent girls. And that is the information that as girls enter puberty, that is between 8 and 14 years, the pituitary glands start producing follicle-stimulating hormone. And what does that do? Which stimulates development of eggs within follicles in the ovary and production of estrogen hormone. That's the role of follicle-stimulating hormone. Then the estrogen stimulates repair of uterine walls. That is, if it is a successive time, maybe not the first time for that girl to be in menstruation periods. So that's when there is repair of uterine walls, but as well estrogen does the secretion of luteinizing hormone, stimulates secretion of luteinizing hormone from the pituitary gland. And when luteinizing hormone is secreted, it causes rupturing of Graafian follicles and it causes ovulation to occur. Yes, that when mature follicles are fully mature and estrogen is produced, it stimulates the production of luteinizing hormone. And this luteinizing hormone causes the rupturing of those follicles in order to release the egg, that is ovulation. And it also stimulates secretion of progesterone hormone from the corpus luteum. And when these follicles open up, they expose the corpus luteum, the inner folding, the inner body of that follicle, and then it produces progesterone hormone. What does it do? Progesterone hormone maintains uterine lining in preparation for implantation. So it also inhibits the production of follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Yeah, it is the one that is preventing any form of successive pregnancy. That maybe if someone has gotten the egg is released, there is no other egg that should come. Why? Because progesterone hormone that is produced after ovulation, it ensures that follicle stimulating hormone stops and your estrogen, so that another egg does not mature in that time. So here we are saying that over time, the corpus luteum shrinks and levels of progesterone hormone reduce. Yes, as time goes on, the corpus luteum goes on shrinking, and as it is shrinking, the progesterone hormone reduces. So if fertilization doesn't take place, what happens? Remember, we have said progesterone hormone is the one that maintains uterine lining. So if it is over time the corpus luteum reduces and levels of progesterone hormone reduce, if fertilization doesn't take place at that time, the uterine lining breaks down, leading to blood flow through the vagina, and that's what we call the menstruation period. So what does this concept mean, that when fertilization doesn't take place? What happens if fertilization takes place is that when fertilization takes place, the process of embryonic development starts, and this embryo develops membranes as it divides into that blastocyst. Then the blastocyst develops trophoblast, and those membranes of the trophoblast begin developing the chorionic villi, and later the placenta, which begins producing progesterone and estrogen hormones, that will maintain the pregnancy and the uterine wall, so that we don't have that blood shedding or that rupturing of the uterine walls. Okay, so what did you get in that part A? It looks at specifically when you're explaining the menstrual cycle, you're looking at the role of hormones. Your teachers, or if you're a teacher, you know we teach these things, that the role of hormones in the menstrual cycle. In simple terms, we are looking at, when you're explaining that process, you're looking at the roles of hormones. What do they do in that cycle? Then here we have, what advices can you give to the community adolescents on how to overcome challenges handled by the NGO in line with the second mandate? Then we have to go back to the mandate. What did the mandate say? The second mandate says to promote awareness on STI, especially HIV/AIDS, and promote healthy living. Okay, so what advices can you give to the community adolescents on how to overcome challenges handled by the NGO? And those are challenges on STIs, especially AIDS, and how to have a healthy living. So here we have given a number of them. Still here we shall not be restricted on a few ideas. We have a number of them: health, promoting healthy living, and preventing the STIs. For instance, here one of the first concepts we have is seeking information from qualified professionals about the cause, so that you may know how to prevent the mode of transmission. After knowing it, it helps you to know the prevention of STIs, such that they may know how best to overcome them. See that? Then abstinence from sexual activity until they get married to avoid risks of getting infected. Regular testing and counseling in case one is not sure of his or her status, to determine whether to start treatment in case one is infected. I advise them to resist peer pressure influence, as it leads many of them to engage in sexual relations, and this can be affected by joining constructive groups. See how we are explaining these points. Then avoiding substance and drug abuse. How does this one affect lead to sexual intercourse and all that? We are saying that avoid substance and drug abuse, since these can impair one's reasoning and judgment and increase the likelihood of engaging in sexual behaviors. But remember, our mandate was talking about promoting healthy living, and we brought the concept of promoting healthy living by educating and encouraging themselves to feed on balanced diet, to provide their bodies with all nutrients required for growth and other body processes. Regular physical activity like walking, jogging, sports, among others, to keep one's body physically fit. Encouraging people to have adequate sleep and allow their bodies to refresh and support physical and mental health. Then I advise them to learn stress coping mechanisms like meditation, physical exercise, sports, and talking to trusted adults to enhance emotional health. Then maintain good personal hygiene practices like regular bathing, hand washing, and oral hygiene to improve their health. So those are different examples, ladies and gentlemen, of how we could deal with this concept over here. Maybe to organize this concept of the menstruation period, we said we are looking at the hormone. We are looking at a hormone and its role. Hormone, its role. Seeing this luteinizing hormone causes rupturing of Graafian follicles, leading to ovulation and then secretion of progesterone from corpus luteum. Then progesterone maintains uterine lining and then inhibits production of follicle stimulating hormone. Then this final concept that we talked about there. Okay, so here we have our section B, and in section B we shall be discussing through the structure of these items and how to deal with them, both section B part 1 and section B part 2. So section B part 1 comes from the concept of sustainability of the environment and the resources in it, living organisms in it, and that is a concept of almost all senior 1 topics, including the concepts of ecology, man and the environment, that is a lot of associations in biological communities, food chains and food webs, those ones. And according to that, this we have a lot of concepts to discuss through, and I think they will be coming through as we go through this item. Item 4 reads, an environment status report was published highlighting the state of affairs at a certain learning site on a freshwater lake. Below are some of the issues highlighted in the report. The first issue, the many factories established along the shores of the lake release untreated effluents directly into the lake. Then another one, there were no latrines at the busy landing site. Another one, fishermen use indiscriminate fishing nets to catch fish. Another one, the surround swamp has been taken over by real estate dealers and have raised residential apartments. So when you look at that, they say the above challenges are believed to cause serious harm to the environment and the human population. Task: explain how the highlighted activities on the landing site will affect the environment and the human population. So, my viewers, this is so important to note that in this concept, we look at the activity, the human activity in the scenario, and the effect it causes to the environment. Those are the two concepts. And then the third concept is the link, how, the how part. if the human activities and release of untreated effluents, how does it affect the environment? Maybe it leads to death of aquatic organisms. How does it lead to death of aquatic organisms? Then that is the link I'm talking about. So I always tell my learners to put these human activities, these highlighted points, one side, and then another side they put the effects they can cause the environment, and then after they provide a link how when they are looking you are getting prepared for this item. Make sure you always think through those different activities that man does in the environment and how those activities affect the environment, and then which effect exactly do they face cause. For example, when you look at the first response here, we are seeing that the untreated effluents will lead to eutrophication that causes growth of algae on water, which are decomposed by aerobic bacteria and deplete oxygen from the water, leading to death of aquatic organisms. What is eutrophication? That is mineral enrichment. That when the effluents from industries, factories, those liquid, let's say, waste sea from fertilizers, containing nitrates, sulfates, when they dissolve in the water, they make it they enrich it with minerals. They make it fertile, that it allows algae to grow from there. So when algae grow from there, the population of algae increases and the bacteria begin to decompose them. So when the bacteria are decomposing them, they use oxygen and thus reducing the amount of oxygen in water. What happens is that organisms which depend on that dissolved oxygen in water, they will die. Then that's what we are looking at. So we have seen our point having the activity, the effect it causes to the environment, and then in the middle the explanation of how it happens. Then here we have lack of latrines at the sites leads to contamination of water bodies with feces, which contain pathogens that will lead to spread of waterborne diseases. Pathogens that cause those diseases, and therefore these pathogens can be spread to people through the water when they drink it. Those are waterborne diseases. Then we are seeing the indiscriminate fishing. What does it cause? Catching of juvenile fish and destroying the breeding grounds. What will that result into? The population of fish, or population of fish reduces and leads to their extinction. So see, we are looking at the activity, what it causes and how it does that. The same applies to this. Clearing of the swamp will lead to flooding. Here the problem and its cause are coming, the activity and its effect are coming close to each other, which actors. Why? Because the swamps are acting as natural water catchment areas that hold the water. So if they are destroyed, that water is filled in all those areas of other areas, and it floods there. So suggest solutions. Here we say suggest possible solutions to the above challenges. What are possible solutions to those challenges? That is one is something simple. Enforce fishing regulations, for example, banning ban on indiscriminate fishing nets to allow fish grow and increase in number. Still here we don't just say put strict regulations, be elaborative please. Encouraging industries to treat wastes before they release them to the environment. Another one, constructing public latrines at such busy landing sites to reduce problems resulting from poor disposal of wastes, human wastes. Then implementing strict regulations on people living or doing any activities in swamps in order to prevent encroaching on the wetlands. Then the problem comes here. Why is it important to conserve such ecosystems? We tend to get responses on this item and we focus them on man. Everything we get revenue, the government collects foreign exchange, all those we get food from there. Here in biology, let's consider the environment in general. How is the act of conserving the environment important to the whole environment and the populations of organisms in it? For instance, here we are saying, why is it important to conserve, or it conserves species of organisms living in the ecosystem and enables them to mature, reproduce, and pass on their genes to the next generation. That one prevents their extinction. Another one we see, we have conserving swamps helps to purify water, since swamps act as natural water filters. See that? Trapping and removing all impurities that flow along with the water. So that is what we are looking at. Then conserving ecosystems modifies the climate. For example, swamps transpire and contribute to rain formation and also absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. See, the functions are directly attached to the environment itself. It also prevents habitats of organisms that preserves habitats of organisms that live in a particular ecosystem. For example, for a swamp, there are organisms like toads, frogs, tortoises, snakes, among others. It helps to maintain food interactions among organisms in the ecosystem, since they depend on each other. Instead of saying we get food, let's see the concept of food interactions among all organisms in that ecosystem. In item 5, it is the same concept, same understanding. Maybe looking through it here, and you record the responses. That is the question. You could pause and write it down and even look through these responses here. Mr. Mukasa cleared a forest along the slope of a hill that had fertile soils to extend his farm for growing maize. For several years of growing maize on his farm, he applies artificial fertilizers and uses herbicides for weeding the maize farm. After harvesting, he burns down the garden to clear it for next season before plowing using tractors. So here you can see the major points highlighted, and then they say explain dangers of Mr. Mukasa's farming practices to the environment. Still the same thing. What are those practices? What dangers do they cause, and how? Loss of biodiversity, for example, as a problem resulting from what? destruction of the forest. Why? Because the forest has habitats of these what? Organisms. If you say use of fertilizers, herbicides, how does it affect the soil? Maybe it reduced fertility. How? By killing microorganisms that lead to formation of organic matter. A lot of things that you can do. Like we said, the concept here lies in looking at the human activity, or that activity, farming practice, whatever it is, the effect it causes to the environment, and how that activity leads to that effect. So those are that is part A of this item. And part B, still, how can the environment be sustainably utilized by Mr. Mukasa without damage? Then you're giving other alternative farming practices that Mr. Mukasa would have used in order to conserve the environment. For example, instead of cutting trees, planting trees along the slope to harvest soil, to prevent soil erosion, since roots of trees hold soil particles together. Yes, we don't give solutions which are hanging. Planting trees, how will it help to prevent erosion? Use of organic fertilizers to reduce consumption of artificial ones, thus improving soil structure by holding soil particles together. You know, those organic fertilizers have that sticky nature of the humus component in them, and that one helps to hold soil particles together. Use of biological pest control methods to prevent use of chemicals and minimize pollution. You see, the points don't leave hanging, you give the other side. Minimum tillage, that is the digging of the land. When you're tilling it, you have to do a minimum one, not going deep to destroy soil structures. Minimum tillage. Farming to prevent soil erosion, mostly on slopes where loosened particles can be carried by water. Terracing on slopes to reduce the speed of water runoff and control soil erosion, you see. Then encourage bush fallowing instead of bush burning to allow soil regain its fertility and preserve microorganisms, because we said that one leads to death of microorganisms. Inform Mr. Mukasa the importance of using the environment sustainably. We talked about them in item 4, all those different importances. But remember, we said we answer the scenario, meaning you have to personalize those effects to the scenario in question. Personalizing these importances to the scenario. For example, you see that it ensures that land remains fertile and produces for future generations. It preserves species of organisms, that one we mentioned it in the other first one. It reduces pollution, leading to healthier environment that supports organisms in it. So I think item 1, part 1 of section B is that one. And here we have section B, part 2, which is the last section of biology paper 1. And So this part looks at specifically concept of human physiology in details, looking at processes of nutrition in man, transport, in mammals, specifically humans, then looking at concepts of excretion, they come in here. Yeah, so here for example we have, it's as opposed to last time our learners, you used to think so much of every time you see this, your brain goes to nutrition. This man was in the, let's say maybe in a soccer match, then this one ate his carbohydrate meal, then it doesn't stop on those ones. It generates concepts of excretion, transport. You recall the UNEB of last year, 2024, had the concept of blood groups, which is transport. So here we are having an item generated from excretion, saying in a soccer match that was held between senior 3 and senior 4 class at school X, Tom, a student in senior 3, found himself sweating so much, breathing deeply, and upon cooling down, he found his face having crystals of salt. When he went to urinate, he excreted very little volumes of urine. He's wondering what might have happened to his body. So in this concept, what do you do? We are seeing that it's giving us still some concepts to pick out, and after picking them out, we shall use them to answer. For example, they are saying he found himself sweating so much, that is 1. Breathing deeply, 2. And upon cooling, his face had crystals of salt on it, and then he excreted very little volumes of urine. So those are 4 areas. 4 areas. 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are the 4 areas we are talking about. And then what do we do here? Explain changes that took place on his body. So we are to give those changes and just explaining those changes. Simple, not writing a lot of words, not explaining a lot, just putting those changes that took place and you explain them. For example, sweating heavily was due to increased body temperatures during a strenuous exercise, and this therefore is a heat regulatory mechanism that cools the body as evaporation takes place. You know very well that when during strenuous activity there is a lot of body metabolism, metabolic processes are taking place in the body at a very high rate, and therefore with that there is a lot of energy generated in the body. Along with that, heat energy as another form of energy or loss of energy from the excess energy produced, and therefore that heat has to be eliminated from the body. How? By heating the water in the body to evaporate it, causing the cooling. Those of physics, you know very well the concept of cooling by evaporation. Then deep breathing. During the exercise, muscle cells respire more to produce energy in the form of ATP, which increases demand for oxygen and production of carbon dioxide. This therefore helps to increase the intake of oxygen and remove of carbon dioxide. That's the reason why there is deep breathing, that as you're doing this activity, the body is using a lot of energy, therefore it needs to take in more oxygen. But as well as respiration is taking place at a high rate, there is need to there is a generation of carbon dioxide as a byproduct. And you know what happens when carbon dioxide accumulates in the body? It causes it reacts with high water to produce carbonic acid, and then the body fluids become acidic. So we need to eliminate it there and then. That's why there is a lot of increased breathing rate. The salt crystals, as formed as the sweat evaporates, water leaves the body surface, but dissolved salts like sodium chloride are left out and form on the skin surface. In chemistry S1, you recall the concept of evaporation to dryness, that when the sweat evaporates from our body and it reaches the surface of our skin and finds very hot temperatures, the water component evaporates off, but the dissolved salts are crystallized out and they form on the skin surface. Then here, excreting very little urine was due to heavy sweating that led to decrease in blood volume and increased osmotic pressure of blood, which stimulated the body to conserve water by reabsorbing more water from urine. It's what we are saying, that due to excessive sweating, the amount of water in the body is reducing, which is making blood and other fluids in the body to be so concentrated, and that one raises the osmotic pressure. So what happened when osmotic pressure of blood raises, the body, the receptors in the brain detect this raise in the concentration. The chemoreceptors detect the raise in the concentration and stimulate the release of antidiuretic hormone. We shall see that in the details of on part B. And then that the antidiuretic hormone is secreted, it leads to more reabsorption of water at the kidney and in the collecting ducts and distal convoluted tubules. See, we have this concept here, this drawing here of the kidney. We shall use it on part B. Explain the process of urine formation, highlighting how the very little volumes of urine came about. So this is what happens here. So this is our kidney here, and our kidney has two areas. This outer region called the cortex, see that, and this one called the medulla, that inner one. And when a section of the kidney in here, just one part of this kidney contains millions of cells called nephrons, and these are the this is one nephron expanded, and that nephron cuts across from the cortex to the medulla region, coming to collect to the ureter here. That's why you see that collecting ducts extend down here up to when they connect in the ureter here, meaning this one here is arranged in a way that these parts start from here, then these ones that are down here inside here in the medulla. So what happens is that during the process of urine formation, that in primary you said the main function of the kidney is to filter blood. So blood containing impurities flows through the renal artery. You're seeing it here coming in the renal artery, and then the renal artery branches into these smaller arteries called arterioles. So this is the afferent arteriole taking blood into the glomerular capillaries in the Bowman's capsule here. This is the Bowman's capsule, and inside it we have a network of very many capillaries called the glomerulus. So when that material flows, the blood containing impurities, wastes, flows into the glomerulus, there is a lot of pressure. How does it come out? That this afferent arteriole coming is very wide, is more wider than this efferent that is taking blood away like this. So what happens is that there is pressure generated and forces materials here to diffuse through the glomerular walls, capillaries of the walls of the glomerular capillaries, and it flows here to the distal proximal convoluted tubules. So the materials that have flown through are those ones which are having small sizes that can pass through the thin membrane or the thin epithelium of the glomerular capillaries, and those materials form what we call a glomerular filtrate. For example, the amino acids, the salts, the urea, glucose, and other materials, water itself. So, but recall, those materials, some of them we have mentioned, are still important in the body. But if they continue flowing in the distal convoluted tubules here through this loop of Henry, and then to the distal convoluted tubules, from proximal here through the loop of Henry, then through the distal convoluted tubule here, they will flow to the collecting duct, and they end up becoming urine, connecting to the ureter here and go to the bladder. But what happens is that after this process we call the ultrafiltration, where these substances are forced under pressure to filter through, the ones which are important, like we mentioned, of glucose, amino acids, salts are reabsorbed back, and water. Then the wastes continue flowing as urine. Then it means after filtration here, filtering means that some substances will remain here, others flow through. Those that remain here are the ones in the glomerulus, are the ones with a very large size that cannot easily pass through those thin walls unless the kidney has a damage. Then the ones that are important but have passed through are reabsorbed back. That's why we shall see that on the proximal convoluted tubules here there is reabsorption of important substances, water, glucose, salts, amino acids, and then in the loop of Henry more reabsorption takes place, but specifically for water and ions, salts. Then in the proximal convoluted tubules, distal convoluted tubules here and collecting ducts, mostly there is variable reabsorption of water. Why am I saying variable? It changes according to the concentration of the body and the amount of hormones produced, like the antidiuretic hormones. Then here we have the detailed process explained here by containing part A. Explain urine formation. Blood containing wastes flows to the kidneys, and filtration takes place in units called nephrons, and nephrons remove waste products and reabsorb important materials back to blood. In the glomerulus, blood is filtered where water, salts, glucose, urea, and other small molecules are forced out of the Bowman's capsule, forming a glomerular filtrate, while large molecules like plasma proteins and blood cells remain in blood. That's what we have just said. So, in the loop of Henry, further reabsorption of water and salts takes place, creating a concentration gradient in the renal medulla, in the medulla region. And in the distal convoluted tubules and collecting ducts, variable reabsorption of water and salts occurs, controlled by hormones. Due to dehydration, remember they said we highlight how the little volumes of urine came about. Due to dehydration caused by sweating, the body releases antidiuretic hormone from the pituitary gland, which increases permeability of collecting ducts and distal convoluted tubules to their permeability to water, leading to more water being reabsorbed to blood. And here they say, how can Tom manage the state of his body? 1, by drinking plenty of fluids like water, rehydration salts, juice, to replace lost water. You see how you don't just say by drinking water. For what? To replace the one lost. Allowing the body to rest and recover from strenuous activity, and then maintaining a balanced diet to ensure adequate nutrient and energy intake for recovery. So here is a summary of the process according to how I have explained to you here in the illustration. And then here we said our points should be explained, giving a point and how it takes place, sweating, and then this one of deep breathing. I explain pectate such explanations. Salty crystals, why? Because of that evaporation that caused them to dry on the skin, then increasing very little, excreting very little urine was due to heavy sweating that leads to volume of water in reducing in the body, and the blood reduced in volume, raising its osmotic pressure, which stimulated the body to conserve water by preventing reabsorbing more from urine. Item 7, it is extracted from the concept of urinalysis, but at a level of our students, where we test urine samples, confirming testing the health of the kidneys. We are having 2 tests. One, the Benedict test for reducing sugars, that is testing for the presence of glucose in urine, and then the Buretis test, the one of using copper 2 sulfate and sodium hydroxide, testing for the presence of proteins in urine. And here we are seeing observations that of patient A, that the solutions turned from blue, green, orange, and finally to brown. That is a Benedict test for reducing sugars. And then the purple solution was formed, that is on what? indicating the protein's presence. Then patient B, the blue color of Benedict solution persisted and a blue precipitate was formed with the test for proteins. What does that one mean? This one implies that this sample of patient A has reducing sugars. So which reducing sugar in this case? Glucose. And this purple solution also indicates that urine sample of patient A had proteins, but this sample of patient B, the Benedict color persisting blue and the blue precipitate forming still blue is the color of copper 2 sulfate alone. It means patient B, the samples are negative, but these ones are positive. They are testing presence of glucose and proteins in urine. So those are the explanations I expected here that explain the results from urine samples of both patients. In a Benedict test, patient A's result showed color change from that green, orange through brown, which indicates presence of reducing sugars, and that is possibly the glucose in urine. Then for patient B, the blue color of Benedict persisted, indicating that there were no reducing sugars. That's what we have just said. In a Buret's test, patient A's result showed the formation of purple solution, indicating presence of proteins, while patient B's blood didn't show any proteins in them. So this is what I expected to be presented. So those are the scores I expected to be given on that concept of formation of the urine samples. Then identify the health problems related with observations above and how they might have come about. In simple terms, we are looking at the health conditions and their causes. And when you look at that, we have conditions related with presence of glucose in urine, that is diabetes mellitus. And then the condition called proteinuria, which is the condition of having glucose in urine, or others are saying damage to the kidney, like we shall see. The presence of glucose in urine, called glucosuria, that is the name of that condition, indicates diabetes, and the presence of proteins in urine indicate kidney damage. Diabetes occurs when the pancreas does not produce. Now this is the cause of diabetes. Note what students always give. Semani, it is caused by accumulation of glucose or sugar. It is caused by the pancreas failing to produce insulin, or the body resists against insulin. So those are the causes of diabetes mellitus. And then the presence of proteins results from kidney damage or kidney diseases like glomerulonephritis that damage the glomeruli, leading to leakage of proteins through it to the filtrate and then produced out in urine. So those are the concepts that I expected to be talked about in that context. And then the last point of that item is an advice to patient A and patient B according to the health problems they are facing. And number 1, patient B doesn't face any disease, but patient A has diabetes mellitus and kidney damages. So what do we say? I advise patient A to immediately consult the doctor for further diagnosis, because that test using urine samples and testing for proteins and glucose is a preliminary test. We do further test and management to suspected diabetes and kidney failure, which may include dietary changes and lifestyle modification. What are dietary changes that can lead to a healthy functioning kidney? Stop eating a lot of salts, more so the low salt. Stop eating a lot of fatty foods, and even when you eat them, have enough physical exercises. Then medication, then lifestyle modification. A sedentary lifestyle of sitting the whole day and you don't do any physical exercise may endanger kidneys. How? By leading to accumulation of unnecessary or non-essential fats in the body, which will lead to blood flowing to the kidneys with a lot of impurities, with a lot of pressure, resulting from blockage of blood vessels due to accumulation of those fats. So a lot can happen. I advise patient B to maintain his or her lifestyle, continuing regular checkups and ensure a balanced diet, because we have seen that for him, he had no problem. So we are just advising him to maintain his lifestyle. Yeah, so I think that is the end of this item, this paper. And thank you very much for always watching, tuning, viewing our channel. To those who have subscribed, thank you. And to those who are about to subscribe, still we welcome you to this channel, where we explore together concepts of biology with a lot of ease, with me, Mugisha Gerald, and our YouTube channel, MGBS Biology-Connect. I urge you to subscribe, like, and follow, as I also produce more content for you, which will help us to attain our goals in biology. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.